This is Manny Moonraker from the UFO Buster Radio podcast. Now, spearheading the Dark Horde podcast. And listen, welcome to episode number 7 of this particular podcast. It's been a tough week for the Moonraker lately. As of lately, parents, what can you do with them? They get old. They float too, according to the clown in it, Mr. Pennywise. It's been a busy week here in the Dark Horde UFO Buster Radio Network household, but it is what it is. We all go through this, I'm sure. It is something that is a rite of passage. It is all about, returning back to when you were a kid, a babe, a child, as you pass middle age. And then you have to be taken care of. It is a different world, unfortunately, from what it was when our parents were dealing with their parents and so forth and so on, going back to maybe hairy apes. I don't know. All I got to say is I'm glad to be here at episode number 7. The idea between myself and others that helped me cook up the Dark Horde was to find a podcast that basically can make those connections between the paranormal and my other topic that I like to talk about, UFO, aliens, space, Elon Musk, and everyone else that's digging in. One of the things that I like to do is make sure that I have a platform that can discuss things that are happening in a contemporary fashion. It's not always a good thing to go back to the 1800s because somebody says the fucking place is haunted. Sometimes you gotta look at what are people doing today. We have one story specifically speaking to that, and of course we gotta go back to the fucking 1800s. But that's the way it is, right? A lot of these places that are haunted from way back when. It just didn't happen. Like someone didn't just crack open a box of Cheerios and the damn Cheerio came out and floated around and say, oh, the place is haunted. Some of these places have really bad things that have happened in them from a long time ago. And as they say, those negative energies, they kind of get trapped in these places. Now, just like it happens in the horror movies, you got places that, for some fucking reason, people decide it's a good idea to build them on a fucking cemetery. How does that happen? I don't understand where anyone sees that that's a good idea. No matter what country you live in. I don't care what fucking language it is. I don't care if you just came out of the 3rd grade and you graduated and now you're an adult. To be honest, graves of people should really be left alone. You shouldn't put a big fucking house on it and then think nothing's going to happen. Yeah, this is another story that's in here. And like we've actually talked about this in the past episodes, especially when I was talking about Galveston and all these other places where these there's haunted houses that have been around for fucking ever. And people like going to them just for fucking fun, just for shit's sake, just shits and giggles. Let's just go in there and get scared. Unfortunately, some people don't understand that some of that shit follows you. One of the best things about this podcast is our listeners and the fact that on Spreaker.com, you can actually have a live episode and have live people talking in the chat. So, we got a few right now. Great Man, Gooter, Dave, and that is who's in there right now. It is crazy to see these guys in there, podcast after podcast, episode after episode, just sharing in not only just their experience, but also sharing these stories. And a lot of time, they after the fact, the after party of the show, the discussion, they do share some insight, especially when some of these haunted places turn out to be in their neck of the woods, whether it be out in Australia, out in California, out in Chicago, or wherever the fuck they're at. But that's the beauty of podcasting. It's the beauty of sharing stories in this particular format because you get to hear more from other places. And just like UFO and aliens, the perspective is worldwide. It's not something that just happens in the United States or in Western countries. cultures, it happens in the East too. East, South, North, wherever the fuck you're at, it doesn't even matter. Shit gets crazy. Completely nuts. And Goozer says, don't forget Chi-Town, Chicago. So I said, we got 2 stories for today. One of them is a list of top 10 places to go to that if you want to scare the pants off of someone, you might want to throw them in there, lock the door behind them, and run like hell. Just leave them there overnight. The other story is more contemporary. It's about camps. A lot of people, I don't know, I feel like things like camps, summer camp and stuff like that, and campfire stories have kind of died out. It's a dying thing, because how can you replace a cell phone? I mean, really? Is that even possible? But this is what we're going to be talking about. But like every episode, after I do my initial rant and I talk a lot of shit and lose people, and then they start like tuning out and they go to other podcasts that they feel are more to their speed. I play a little track, a little song to get you in the mood. Check this out.
Give you
The guys in the chat box are alluding to the fact that I might have said when referring to scary places or camps like band camp. Band camp is scary as hell too. Have you seen those kids emptying out the spit valves? God, that's so fucking gross. The first story for today, and here's one of the things that I found so fascinating. When I first started the podcast, I was like, there's no way I'm going to find news stories that have anything to do with the paranormal. Now this, in a roundabout way, it does, right? The title for this article, which was actually published a few days ago, are Minnesota summer camps scared off from telling scary stories? This is like, it's like you sitting down with your kid and telling them how you used to walk to school 50 blocks and you had like no sandals, you barely had a shirt on, you used to wear shorts, and even then you couldn't afford underwear, so, and he turns to you and says, what, you mean you didn't have Uber? It's the same thing here. So it turns out that telling scary stories in camp, it's a bad thing now. Now it's a bad thing. You used to be able to tell kids, you're being bullied, go over there and you kick their ass. Don't cry to me. Go handle your business. Well, fuck, you can't say that anymore, right? But now we're taking it a step further because we can scar kids for life if we tell them a scary story. Like, I wish some of the stories that I heard growing up, fuck, somebody should have told them to stop telling me them things. Because I remember them to this day. To this day, I've taken those scary stories, put my spin on them, of course, and repeated them to my children. What the fuck is wrong with that? Why is that? How did I scar them? Some of them only sleep with nightlights. I get it. There might be some scarring there, but geez, you really can't tell campfire stories anymore? What the hell's going on with the world? So basically, in Minnesota, there are a lot of summer camp places that are not going to be telling woodland monster stories. No Bigfoot stories. No, over here in Texas, La Llorona. We're not going to have her trying to take up kids in the middle of the night in Minnesota. You just remember that. It's not going to go down that way. Basically, there is a bit of nostalgia. Of course, like I just said, people remember these situations. It becomes a part of who they are as they grow up. And they share those stories with their children and friends and things like that. Just last summer, we did that a few times. But it turns out there's groups like the American Camp Association, or ACA, which basically is a national organization that aims to ensure the quality of camp programs, though they haven't taken a hard stance. Like, they're not going around to Chucky and Billy and Martha, who are dressed up in their fancy camp outfits. They're not telling them to shut the fuck up and not tell scary stories, but people are hinting about this. They're hinting that there might be a problem. Yeah. Now, in Minnesota, there's about 100 camps that are accredited by the ACA, and basically they're not putting a standard out, but I'm saying, not saying. They want to stop kids from being scared, waking up with night terrors because Bigfoot is chasing them around. They want to change the way we say scary-ass fucking stories. You probably, the camp folks, they probably don't go around saying scary-ass fucking story time. But still, are kids really being scarred for life? I mean, you guys should chime in on this. Somebody in Minnesota needs to say something. Some of the old-timers. I know there's about half the state is probably over the age of 75. You guys need to stand up, get your drugs going, get the cane out or your hover around, and make a beeline to the ACA and all these other campgrounds and be an example of what a good scary ass fucking story can be like. Honestly, if anybody shows up at a camp with diapers on. That'd be scary enough for me. I probably would never go back to camping anyway. But I'm just saying, there's got to be a reason why all of a sudden we can't raise kids to have a fucking backbone. And scary stories are part of that. They're part of growing up. Part of understanding the unknown. Freaking crazy. Crazy as hell. Apparently, the attitude of camps are a bit mixed, as they say. There was a study of 86 camps professionals across the country and found that 31% of camps prohibit ghost stories, while only 13% encourage them. Those are some crazy ass numbers. That makes no sense at all. But those numbers are so skewed, it's not even funny. But let's be honest. It's a camp story. Campfire story. You see it popular on television and movies. Why can't it happen in real life? Why does all that have to be fake? Makes no sense. There is a particular article in here between a specific person tied to the ACA, and she says, I think all of these stories were designed to build community in different ways, and one way to do that is by sharing a scary experience while still keeping kids safe in their bunks at night. No shit. Well, for some people, Bigfoot is real, so, and, you can't really save them if they're in the middle of the fucking woods in these log cabins with really shitty locks and stuff. I mean, what can you do? Kids are going to be scared no matter what. The telling of legends of lost campers to children from wandering off isn't the only purpose of gathering around a campfire. It really is a communal thing. You get together, you share stories. A lot of them is your own family, your own relatives who had scary ass shit happen to them. So why would that scar a child to the point where they've got to go get some fucking Xanax? Maybe it's the fact that we give them Xanax is what the problem is. Go on. Somebody stop me here. It's fucking ridiculous. There is a lot more to this article. You guys got to check that out. I really was highly disappointed by it. Scary stories are the thing. Sometimes some parents do have to disconnect the umbilical cord eventually. Kids got to know there are mysteries out there. There's darkness just as well as there's light. But you got to be able to handle both. And if we're going to tell them that their phone has all the answers that they need, come on. That's just fucking ridiculous. I might be alone in this. Some of you might believe otherwise. But not telling camp stories because kids are going to be scarred for life. I haven't not one person have I met that's been scarred for the entire life just because they had a scary little campfire story told to them. That's just asinine. Ridiculous. And if you did get scared, fuck, you need to put that fucker in a psycho ward. Don't leave him out there by himself. He's gonna cause some crazy shit to happen. what does the picture of the child that can't be scared today looks like in about 2 decades? What kind of a citizen are they going to be? That is where we kind of missed the boat on things. Yeah, you get scared for a little bit. You're not fucking scarred. I remember not too long ago, the Moorrecord kids were kind of like pummeled with like scary stories of South Texas. But yeah, that first night they had the night light on. Actually, they had the light on. Period. And but the thing is, they're not scarred. They're not going around shitting their pants every time somebody drops something. No. Fight or flight. You got to exercise the ability to recognize when something's fucked up and you need to get the hell out of that situation. But if you're protected from everything, every single little story, your kid's fucked. Plain and simple. So the last time we did a top 10 haunted place article, actually it was down under, where they give you like Vegemite sandwiches and stuff, Australia. But we have one which is just a basic 10 real life haunted houses, and I picked number 10. Why not? It sounds like a familiar place. I want to say that even this particular place was actually mentioned in the chat box not too long ago. And then I just said, oh, here's number 9. Nobody gives 2 fucks. Number 8, God, come on. Really? They put this in here? And then I stopped at number 7. The link for every story that we cover is in the description for the podcast. So you should feel free, if you need to, and look at all the other items listed, these places, because there might be one near you. You might get up one day brave as fuck. You had a little bit too much weed, too much alcohol, and you're like, hey, fuck it, I'm going to go to this place and check it out and see what happens to me. Make sure you videotape it and send it in, because we'd love to see it. If anything else, we might not share it, but the laughs, I'm sure, will be fantastic. The article is called 10 Real Life Haunted Houses, and I started with number 10, the Wally House. Not Wally from Disney, not that guy, not the little robot, no. The Wally House is in San Diego, and it was built, get this is where this is what I don't understand. I don't, where the fuck do you get developer degrees? Does anyone even look at when you survey the land and you say, oh, well, check it out. Cemetery. Well, fucking not. It's nice big space, a little lumpy here and there, but we'll flatten it out. A few bodies, but we'll throw some fucking concrete on it. Nothing's gonna happen. What's the worst that could happen? Yeah. The Wally House was built on the execution grounds of James Robinson, nicknamed Yankee Jim. In 1852, Yankee Jim was convicted of grand larceny and sentenced to death by hanging. Yeah, that happened. The hangman set the noose improperly, poor Yankee, and allowing Yankee Jim's feet to graze the ground while prolonging the hanging process. So basically, he had a little bit of support from his toes, which didn't help him much because eventually, Yankee Jim bit the dust. In 1856, Thomas Wally bought the land where Yankee Jim had been killed/hung, and he built it for his family. Now, here's the thing. Here we go again. That was only 4 fucking years after they hung Yankee Jim. But apparently, the Wally family was not from the area, because it turns out that they found it a rather nice place to build their future home, where they raised the children's, where they hanged this guy, Mr. Jim, Yankee-like. The youngest daughter of the Wally family, Lillian, said often that she could hear the sounds of boots clomping through the house and suspected it to be a ghost of Yankee Jim. You know, that's the kind of stuff has anybody watched the Amityville Horror? I mean, I'm talking about modern times. This predates Amityville, but Jesus Christ almighty. Are you serious? There's just some places you don't build a home. You have to avoid it, like the plague. And 4 years after poor Jimmy here got hung, somebody said, oh, fuck, he's gone. Let's just go ahead and build a nice little house. It's not a prairie. It's an execution ground. Today, the Wally House is registered as a historic site because that's what we do in society. When we kill people off, we make that shit a part of history and charge people to go visit. And it's also a museum. Yeah, I mean, I just said that and wow. Yeah. Visitors and employees at the Wally House report seeing and hearing ghosts of former owners Thomas and Anna Wally because they could not get enough those few years after the hanging of Yankee Jim. They decided to haunt this place their own damn selves. I mean, get their money's worth, right? According to the staff and guests, Thomas's ghost usually resides near the landing at the top of the staircase, while Anna's stays downstairs or in the garden. And here's a little fun fact. Television host Regis Philbin, is he even alive anymore? Did Philbin die? I don't know. Is one of those people who claim to have seen Mrs. Wally's ghost. Now, a lot of people report things like when a loved one has passed, you smell when they are around a familiar perfume. You might hear a song all of a sudden play, or something they say gets trapped in your mind. You hear it over and over. It turns out that usually there's a scent of cigars and perfume that arise from time to time out of nowhere when you're visiting the Wally House. And they're saying that these scents are attached to the disembodied spirits of Anna and Thomas Wally. Because of this, because of all the activity, all the people claiming that they've seen ghosts, and because Regis Philbin freaking signed off on it, it is number 10. And the Wally House has been cited as one of the most haunted places in the United States. And I don't know. Here's my thing. Before we go to number 7, here's my thing. Is a haunted house, is it really a haunted house just because it smells nice? Or somebody had a nice cigar from Cuba? I would think a haunted house, it's a bit more haunting. Like, that's the shit that would scar somebody. Like, if you fucking walked into the Wally House and you're there, you're speaking to your friend or something, and you get scratched or you get bitten. Nobody else is fucking there, just you. To me, that's a haunted house. You get touched. You feel like you're laying in bed and you feel like the bed depressed right next to you. You see the things floating around, books falling, things like that. To me, that's like, oh, that's crazy. But, come on. If they really wanted to sell the fact that the Wally House was haunted, why not shoot a little bit of perfume in the air, a little bit of cigar smoke? Oh, there they go. Thomas and Anna. Listen, I can't talk to the validity of this haunting, but I can say this much. If you are in San Diego, apparently this is the place to visit. If you go there, you've been there, email the podcast at the Dark Horde LLC at Gmail. Or go to the Twitters at Horde Dark. Letting me know what your experience was and what happened to you when you visited the Wally House. And did you see anything? Were you touched? Wink, wink. Number 7 on the list, because I gave 0 fucks for number 9 and 8, is known as the Rose House. Annie Palmer, known as the White Witch, lived in Rose Hall in Jamaica, where she seduced slaves and lovers and then killed them. Killed them dead. What is up with Annie? Like, she has no fucking pastime. Nothing else to do. You know hobbies? You got nothing better to do. The tales of the murderous Annie Palmer of Rose Hall still frighten children in Jamaica. Here's the thing. They're getting it right. I bet they sit around campfires, unlike in Minnesota, and scare the shit out of their children, and they grow up to be okay serial killers. I mean, good citizens of society, right? The house was built in 1770, and Rose Hall was a sugarcane plantation and the home of Palmer and her husband. Palmer grew up in Haiti and learned voodoo from her nanny. No, that's one crazy-ass nanny. I mean, really? How much bad should the kids learn from their nannies? Here's a good example. Fucking voodoo. Who later, this particular nanny, decided to join old Annie Palmer in some of her most nastiest, darkest schemes. When Annie Palmer became sexually unsatisfied with her husband, you know, when you talk about ghosts and horror and stuff like that, you gotta throw sex in it, I guess. She began sleeping with slaves on the plantation. Jeez, equal opportunity. In order to keep them quiet about their affairs, she either killed these men or ordered other slaves to do so. You can't write this stuff. Like, really, like you could pick up a book today that have some kind of horror story from this age, and I bet you they don't talk about stuff like that, because this is where stuff gets scary. So basically, she had her way with them because Mr. Palmer was not doing what he needed to do, and so she decided just to kill him off. That is a person that will probably haunt my future home. I feel it. I feel it. Feel it like it's true in so many ways. It says here that wanting to gain sole possession of her husband's wealth, she actually later on went and poisoned her first husband, and then later married and killed 2 other men. She's a black widow. She might be a white witch, but she's a black widow. She's bad news. But now, she's haunting the shit out of the Rose Hall. Scary as hell. Her sexual escapades continued. In case she encountered a man unwilling to pleasure her, or a slave trying to escape, Palmer had a pit dug 16 feet below the house where she would banish these people. As her reputation continued to go and grow and scare, and basically people got to know that the White Witch was not someone to screw with. She currently haunts the Rose Hall in Jamaica. I would be careful with visiting the White Hall, especially if you're single or something like that, because the White Witch will come after you, throw some voodoo on you, and take care of you. I just paused for a second there because the door behind me just opened and closed. And there's no one outside of it. Thanks, White Witch. I appreciate it. That's scary as fuck. I totally had to turn around. For a second there, I was thinking it was Bugs the UFO hunter that was behind me, but see, You talk about scary shit, this is what happened. I get this is why you can't tell kids nothing. They get fucking scarred. This is just really freaky what just happened. But that's the Dark Horde podcast. We don't give no fucks about ghosts or anything else. And that's why shit goes down. That is the last story that I was going to cover in that particular article. There is 10 of them all together. There's got to be a place next to you where you can go and feel some of the scariness, the hauntingness, the poltergeistness, if that's a word, can be scarred for the rest of your life. This is Man Woorig. I am checking out. Hope to hear from you guys eventually on the Dark Horror Podcast. I also want to thank the folks on Twitter. There are a lot of authors which write a lot of paranormal books that have been retweeting the stories on the Dark Horde Twitter handle, the account, and I appreciate you guys doing that. And please continue. We've got to get the word out on the podcast. We still have a plan to visit a local asylum and do a little bit of ghost hunting of ourselves, but we are waiting for a new and up-and-coming podcast to partner up with. They're getting their stuff together. You'll meet them here first on the Dark Horror Podcast, and there we're going to go and have our way with a couple of asylum baddies from the other side of the veil. I thank you guys for listening. Have a great weekend. Check you out next week. Ciao.